Now is the time to accelerate innovation. T-Mobile for Business is powering Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix operations and epic fan experiences with secure, reliable 5G connectivity. Because an event this big and this fast deserves a network that can set the pace. See what our 5G advanced network solutions can do for your business at T-Mobile.com/now. View 5G device coverage and access details at T-Mobile.com.
Whether you're hosting game day or movie night, DiGiorno knows that planning a watch party on a budget isn't easy. You need the perfect setting, the perfect squad, and the perfect eats. Luckily, you're a game time mastermind, and you know that grabbing DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza can bring home a W because it's packed with half a pound of cheese, sauce, and other toppings and comes at an incredible price. Make the game-winning call and grab a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza from the grocery store today. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a Baller.
Welcome in. It's Wednesday, February 7th on the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Jason Moore.
We're back, baby. Prospect season is here, fellas. And last week we kind of got into it, but not really.
We teased.
Kyle loves a tease in the podcast biz. But now we get to break down these rookies in detail. And I was laughing when the intro was rolling because Jason is over here with his black book, which the black book, all the secrets of scouting are in there. And he's literally just tilted to the side, like a little smile on his face, turning each page as I see him look at his notes. So I'm excited
refreshing
to hear what
my memory. We don't have video
the
on the Dynasty podcast, so I get to just read this black book and be unseen while we prep the show. This is like the Dynasty show. And I'm not just talking about the podcast. Obviously, the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty show is the Dynasty show to have in your arsenal. But this episode is where you're talking about what matters most to most people in Dynasty. Incoming rookies, specifically fantasy running backs. I don't know what more there is to love if you're a Dynasty player than the scouting and gathering of data and opinions and knowledge of the next group of guys that we're going to have for many years.
On this episode, we'll be talking about the 2024 running backs, going through our top, 7 or 8. There's some fringe guys that I think you can also include in there. All of our rankings will be coming out this week on Super Bowl Sunday as part of the Dynasty Pass. So, this is a big episode for us to kind of unveil how we feel about these prospects. And I think our approach is that the three of us did not share at all how we feel about these guys. So I don't know, we could be on opposite ends of the spectrum, and I'm okay with that.
It is funny. So we do the same in the studio with me, Mike, and Andy. And Mike and I were sharing some of our notes on some of these guys, and it was pretty fantastic to see where we are in complete agreement and where we were on complete opposite sides. Down to even one feature. Wait, no, I feel this about this guy. He's like, no, I feel the exact opposite. So it'll be fun to get into it. We're not going to agree on everything here, but if we do, I think that's a good sign. You know what I mean? If it's we all three saw the exact same thing, then that thing is probably true.
The scouting process, which we'll talk about, how we actually do that, what we look for in a running back prospect, it should be different for every single person. You have a different set of eyes, different set of biases that you also bring into, hey, this is what has happened to me in fantasy football with running backs. Maybe you were one of those people that said, hey, I took this running back early in my drafts and it burned me. And so now you're like Mike and you are just wide receivers only. And it's easy to look at running backs a certain way. But I will say, Jason, I've been doing this with you since 2016 So I've been hanging around you talking, but I feel like running back evaluation is kind of and I thought about calling it your bread and butter, but it's your bread pudding, man.
Oh, bread pudding! Thank you. Yeah, no, I do really, really love running back scouting. I feel like that is, it's certainly more of my forte than quarterback scouting. And it's one of those things where I love going back and looking years and years and years of this and seeing, where the process was right, where the process needs to be improved. But it's important to understand, like, we are not here doing NFL scouting. We are here doing fantasy football scouting. The whole point of whether I like a guy or don't like a guy is not, do I think he's a good running back? It's, do I believe that this human being is going to score fantasy points in the next level? And that's a very different thing. There are guys that are going to come and help an NFL team and not help you in fantasy. And then there's the opposite, guys that are going to be much more valuable in fantasy than they're probably worth in NFL dollars and cents.
I think that's
for sure
really well said, actually, too. When you think about, we're going to talk about this today, obviously, before the Combine, before the NFL draft, and the NFL is going to tell us what they think of these guys in late April or whenever the draft is. So I think it's really good to have, context around a player before we get that data piece, which is huge, obviously, because it changes how much opportunity these guys get and the hit rate. But having a background about a player and then also kind of adjusting with NFL draft, information is really a really key point, I think, in the scouting process. So I'm glad you brought that up, Jason, because there were a lot of running backs, especially in this class, that I thought to myself, like, yeah, I could see him make a roster, but, like, will he ever crack my fantasy lineup? Probably not.
There is a lack of consensus right now, beginning of February, of who are the top 4 or 5 and what the order is. Where last year it was kind of like, okay, we know Bijan's going to be at the top. Gibbs seems like he's right there, 2 or 3, depending on people's rankings. I know you were really big on Devon Achane last year. It's in Charbonnet we liked as well. So it was kind of like there was 3 or 4 names last year. This year, before we put together this list, I looked at mock draft databases. I even went on a couple other sites and I was like, nobody actually has a consensus 1, a consensus 2, a 3.
Yeah, and the reason for that this year, if you're just taking like the 30,000-foot view, is that there's no stars. There's no superstars. I think there's some good players. This class, this running back class, has gotten crapped on left, right, and center. Everywhere that I see, everywhere that I read, people are not really big on this being a great running back draft class. And for the most part, I agree. But I think the reason that we feel that way, it's not because there aren't talented players. It's that there aren't superstar prospects. There is not a Jonathan Taylor, a Bijan, a Brees. There's not a guy that you just are so over the moon about, a Saquon Barkley, a Christian McCaffrey, where you're going like, that guy's going to be a sensational star. I do think by the time the NFL draft comes around, there should be a little bit more consensus on who we expect to go first. I know who I think should absolutely go first, and I think will go first, and we'll see by the time that rolls around if that's how it plays out. But we'll get into it.
Okay, we'll see. We'll talk about this player in a second.
I don't even know who it is.
I do want to say that. I know.
But you do.
It's so great. What a tease right now. But also, I'm looking at rookie drafts right now. We just completed one that will be in the 2024 Dynasty Pass. We have rookie mock drafts in there. We'll do one before the Combine, after the draft. And I think right now, like running backs, you might have one sneak into the end of the first round, 1 or 2. But it's not like, we've seen in years past where kind of those running backs get elevated. Now, when we find out landing spots, what naturally happens is running backs move up draft boards for rookie draft picks where you're like, I need a running back really bad. And so I have the 107 and I just really want to force this in there. And we'll talk about some data later, but often, just saying, overdrafting running backs if they have day 3 draft capital is not a good sign. It's not a good thing. It's a really low hit rate. And I think we're going to have more day 3 running backs than really we want to from this class, but we'll wait and see. I do have a question, though, because, Jason, you put this out there on X, on Twitter, that you spent a large chunk scouting these running backs in a completely new way.
Yeah, so that's right.
Tell the people.
Look, we are always about improving the process, getting down deeper into the analytics, but also we grind the film, baby. And how do you want to grind film? You want to grind film on a monitor, on a small monitor, on a laptop screen, on a big monitor? Not me. No, I want them in my eyeballs. I got the Apple Vision Pros, baby, and I'm sitting here scouting on a whatever.
Not a sponsor, but could be a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. Reach out if you need it. Man, I don't know what the scale would be, like a 200, inch perfect 4K display. So it was really fun to watch these clips, and whenever I was able to get, my hands on like all 22, or even just like if you're watching and the plays where they show you from behind the quarterback, the Madden type of camera angle. Oh, that just feels, I'm there. I'm watching this line open up and seeing, how's that running back's vision? Because I know what I see. No, it was a lot of fun, and I did genuinely spend many hours in the Apple Vision Pros scouting running backs. So it was a fun new process.
Jason is one of the thought leaders in the Dynasty running back film Vision Pro sections of our industry.
I think I am I'm the only thinker right now in that very specific segment.
It is funny because I bet in your notes you're going to have to look back and put a little marker and say, this is when I started watching film with the Vision Pro. This was before.
Right.
And see what changes. So, we'll talk about our approach for film and how we've done all that. But once again, Dynasty Pass is coming out, man. It's right around the corner. We put in a lot of hard work, rookie mock draft, rookie rankings, production profiles. When we talk about these running backs, they're on the site. So if you miss something, you're going to find everything in there. UltimateDraftKit.com. Any last plugs of just what you've gotten to put in for the Dynasty Pass?
Oh, man. All the things. Working on some free agency stuff. My injury tracker is live in there, so I'm also looking at players coming off surgery and kind of how to, what you should expect for them this year moving forward. But also a quick shout out to our writing staff. We will have all of these guys' individual profiles as an article on the site over the next, 2 or 3 months leading up to the NFL draft as well. So if you're looking for more in-depth breakdowns on each guy, that will be on the site as well.
Yeah, if you're listening to this show, then you are the UDK Plus user. We launched that on Super Bowl Sunday. So if it's Super Bowl Sunday while you're listening or later, go to UltimateDraftKit.com and get the UDK Plus. All that information is out as soon as Super Bowl Sunday rolls around. It is so valuable. It is so worth it. And if you get it now, you're getting a pre-order pricing, because even though the UDK, the Dynasty stuff, will start rolling out on Super Bowl Sunday, it's pre-order pricing all the way till June. So you're going to get it at the cheapest price. You're going to get the earliest data. If you're listening to this show, you want the UDK Plus. So UltimateDraftKit.com.
All right, let's talk about these running back prospects.
Hey, rookie. Welcome to the NFL.
Before we jump in and just kind of go prospect by prospect, let's talk about what we look for at the running back position when we are scouting. So what do we look for in terms of height, weight? So we have on our website, here's what an RB1 typically looks like, 5'11", around 219, so somewhere in that range. We look for a breakout age of 20, which combines the percentage of the team's yards and touchdowns, so around 20 years old. So we want somebody who's young, we want somebody who has the NFL body, and we want the production that seems to have matched it, because I would say running back is one of the few positions that you could literally step in as a rookie and be effective for fantasy. We see every single year there's at least 2 top 24 running backs that are rookies. That's just been there for over a decade. So we know that you can step right into a role. You can step into stuff different than tight end or quarterback or some of the other positions. But Jason, what do you look for when scouting? What are a couple of boxes you want to be checked?
Yeah, I've got a bunch of boxes that I want checked. The body size is one of them, as you alluded to. The undersized backs don't get enough volume in the NFL, generically speaking. It takes a special talent and a perfect location for that to come through, like Devon Achane this last year. But my main things I look at when I'm scouting college players, when I'm watching film, I always want to see if they win their one-on-ones. Like, I expect a guy that's going to be a good fantasy producer in the NFL, when he's in college and he's got just one guy to beat, he better beat him every time, or at least 90% of the time. When I see a guy constantly losing a one-on-one situation, mano a mano, I'm like, okay, that's fine. You can still be an NFL player, but you're not going to be someone that's on my fantasy team. So I always want to see that. I need them to catch the ball. There are always, every single year, there are so many college prospects that didn't really catch the ball much, but they're really good for college. And it's like, well, that doesn't work for fantasy. It really does. The top 32 running backs this year, the only guys that caught fewer than 20 catches this year were David Montgomery and Gus Bus, just crazy touchdown machines. And on the top 32, which is basically every relevant fantasy running back that's even going, far down the list, they averaged 55 targets. So it has to be in your profile if you want to be productive. And then the last thing that I look for, I want to see touchdowns. It's a really weird, sticky stat for we look for everything. We age, breakout, division, across the board. We look at every metric and we try to find the things that work. For some reason, running backs who have large touchdown production in college, that seems to translate for the NFL. So I like paying attention to that, which is going to be really an interesting topic when we get to the first guy on our list here.
Yeah, I think we all know who you're talking about there with 27 of those last year. But in addition to that, I mean, I echo a lot of that, pass catching 100%. And just to speak to kind of to the one-on-one thing, it's like when I see a guy get to, the linebackers or like the safeties, if they can't make those guys miss in college, they're almost certainly not making those guys miss in the pros, is what I think Jason's getting to. So I like to see contact balance. If you're getting hit, are you falling forward every time? Are you breaking those tackles? Are you making guys miss in space? That's kind of stuff that I look for because, in addition to kind of the size profile, where if a guy is too undersized, they probably can't be an 18 to 20 touch guy and get a goal line role, which in fantasy is what we care about. But if they are going to be a little bit undersized, if they don't have juice in the second level, if they can't create explosive plays, that to me is a yellow to red flag depending on the situation. So largely agree with everything you guys have said so far. I look for a lot of the same things.
I'll just throw in there explosive plays, like Jason said. Like, you just want to see, does this guy have a second gear? We talk a lot about yards after contact, which is I have a tough issue when we talk about yards before, yards after contact, because the context of them is, did they have a really good offensive line that helped aid some of that? Or was their offensive line so bad, and so you end up having a Breece Hall season where you have to literally like juke every single defender and throw them all down? So that matters a lot to me. You had a couple years ago, what was it? Javonte just had an insane college production when it comes to forced missed tackles. You saw that translates in college, but the scheme fit also has been a little different. I do want to give one quick rant because older running backs, it's not my thing, and I would say at this time of the year, we need, like in fantasy circles, you need a news cycle. You need something that gets people excited. And so what we just had was the Senior Bowl, where you get to see some of the older college players. Now, when you guys hear a player's in a Senior Bowl, is it mean for me to say they're in the Senior Bowl because they didn't declare early and maybe they're not as good? That's my initial reaction.
That is oftentimes over the last several years how I feel about the Senior Bowl. It's usually something that I don't care too much about because there is a lot of correlation to fantasy success coming from early declares. I think the last few years have been a little bit different, in part because of COVID. And we can't forget that. Like, that 2020 year was lost, and this is going to still be this is that final year where a lot of these players in the Senior Bowl, they might have played an extra year because they kind of lost a year. We saw great success last year. There's always a few, or at least one, but sometimes a few real big hits from the Senior Bowl, and I pay attention to it because the people that are there watching, a lot of times there's like a clear dominator. There's someone there, the Cooper Kupp or Deebo Samuel, where they go like Puka Nacua, where it's like every day just dominating out here. And then those guys tend to translate. But to your point on this episode about running backs and about age, you have the microphone back, sir.
Yeah, and that's all it is. We talked about this the other day. We're having a discussion. For wide receivers, it seems like the standouts across the board seem to translate to the NFL. The running backs that are 23, 24 years old have just kind of been accumulators or been around for a while or transferred. Like this day and age, it's not weird to see somebody like Ray Davis, who's 24 years old out of Kentucky, but he's played for 3 different colleges. So you just kind of have to take that in. And what I wanted to, I did a little research on Senior Bowl running backs. If you're a Senior Bowl running back and you're drafted after pick 75, so you're kind of like, round 3, round 4, round 5 in the NFL draft, what happens is there's this early buzz about these players because these are the only running backs we can talk about because that's all we have right now. We don't have Jonathan Brooks or anybody else running right now. We just have these guys. And so they kind of get elevated in our minds from those early Senior Bowl takes. Do you guys remember Kenneth Dixon?
Oh, yeah.
He was a fun player to get on board with. He was a 4th round pick, but guys, he was a 1st round Dynasty rookie pick. Okay,
that was a mistake.
I mean, there's a couple of hits on this list. I went all the way back to 2016. Kareem Hunt crushed at that draft pick, but then you have a bunch of names: Kalen Ballage, Keyshawn Vaughn got elevated a ton, Trey Sermon, Michael Carter.
Trey Sermon's like the poster boy for don't reach in your rookie draft.
Don't bring that up to Jason.
Yeah.
We had Dameon Pierce do the same thing. Just another chance for me to dunk on Dameon Pierce. But I just want to mention that point because right now you're only getting Senior Bowl running backs that we get to talk about, Marshawn Lloyd. And it just kind of does that. So keep that in mind. Older running backs we don't love. And one last stat here before we jump in. Marvin Eloquin, one of our Dynasty writers, gave a really good stat that the average top 24 fantasy running back, which is what we're talking about, they average 1.68 yards per team play in their kind of their breakout season. So I want to see a running back that hits a threshold of 30% or more in the Dominator rating. Like that's what we talk about a lot. Is like, are they soaking up this team's production? Like Jason said, do they have these touchdown totals? Do they have these yardage totals? And can they translate? So we'll talk about some of these guys and the way they do it. But I'm going to tease it before we talk about our first running back. We're going to take a break.
Now is the time to accelerate innovation. T-Mobile for Business is powering Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix operations and epic fan experiences with secure, reliable 5G connectivity. Because an event this big and this fast deserves a network that can set the pace. See what our 5G advanced network solutions can do for your business at T-Mobile.com/now. View 5G device coverage and access details at T-Mobile.com.
Whether you're cheering on your favorite team or hosting a movie night, DiGiorno knows planning a winning watch party on a budget isn't easy. You need the perfect setting, the perfect squad, the perfect eats, and the perfect plan to keep everyone pumped all night long. So why would you fumble the play by ordering delivery? The wait times, the fees, the cold food, it can't outdo the delicious fresh-baked taste of DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza, especially on game night. No, you need to draw up the perfect plan. Luckily, you're a game time mastermind, and you know that grabbing a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza is one call that brings home a W. With half a pound of cheese, sauce, and other toppings at an incredible price, it's your game day MVP, most valuable pizza. So are you ready for a big W at your next watch party? Don't take any chances. Make the right call and grab a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza from the grocery store today. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
All right, I promised we'd get into it. The first guy we're going to talk about is Blake Corum, senior from Michigan, who last year was supposed to declare. He was on the early list and then he went back to school. And Blake Corum is an interesting prospect because when you think of college football in 2023, the year before, he's one of the faces of college football. Like he dominated. You saw him in the national championship game against Washington. He was the offensive MVP. And Blake Corum has accumulated a lot of a lot of touches, 675 career attempts. So production's there, great college university, it's high-level stuff that you can look at. He is a bit older. He's 23 years old, and the biggest bugaboo is that he is currently listed at 5'8". Now, whenever we talk about these measurables, who knows what they're really going to weigh in or what his real height is, but since 1999, there's only been 7 running backs 5'8" or shorter drafted, and most of them have not been hits. Okay, so early on, I look at this and I ask myself when I went to draft prospects and go, other than this big productive season that he had last year, 27 touchdowns on the ground, as a prospect, guys, like there's a lot of red flags. Am I crazy? Who wants to jump in first?
I will jump in first because when I watched him, I could only think of the wise words of Billy Madison, who said, Blake Corum, more like Blake Borum. Dude was so boring. I did not love Blake Corum. If this is the number one prospect, if this is the number one drafted guy in the NFL, I don't think I will be very excited for his collegiate, for his NFL fantasy production. When I watched him, just film-wise, there was nothing great, nothing special. There was nothing bad. I didn't watch him and think, this guy sucks. Never did I think that. He was okay. He was okay. He just wasn't like there was when I was watching, my notes are like nothing bad, but nothing great. I can't figure out anything that makes him special at all that's going to translate at the next level in a way that gives me extreme confidence. Obviously if he's drafted in the first round, which I don't think any running back will be drafted in the first round this year. But if he is, then that will add to guaranteed volume and things that do translate for fantasy. But I was pretty disappointed. I do love the production profile. Like I said, I do look for touchdowns in college from the running back, 27 touchdowns this year, 18 the year before. That's just rushing touchdowns. Certainly very productive. But film-wise, I was bored out of my mind watching Blake Borum, and I am not in love. I really did not. I did not get excited for the first prospect that I scouted here.
Official nickname on the site. It's one of those things I think with Blake Corum where it is kind of this film versus analytics, when you talk about his profile debate, because the touchdowns you can't ignore, right? I mean, literally like scoring touchdowns every time he touches the ball, it seemed like, is crazy. And it's because he had that goal line role that was so valuable at Michigan. But I'm with you, Jason. I mean, my first note, and Jason has the black book. Okay, I'm old school. I just read on a notepad. But my first note was just not a lot of wow plays on tape. Like, he'll get you 3, 4, 5 yards here and there, but like, I don't see a lot of missed tackles. I don't see a lot of explosive plays. Not necessarily a prolific pass catcher. Like, I agree that he's okay, but just nothing great that I see. So you add in the size concerns, and I think when you kind of think about how the general public views the college football season, everybody knows the name Blake Corum. So my fear is that in Dynasty rookie drafts, when he potentially does go maybe late round 2, early round 3 of the NFL draft, people are just going to just automatically be like, oh, Blake Corum, like I know him from college. And I think his rookie pick ADP potentially could be elevated as a result. So I agree. I mean, not a lot that I loved on tape with Blake Corum as well. So I'm kind of with you, Jason.
In my notes, I wrote that linebackers consistently took really bad angles on him. And then part of that is just his size and the way that you can't see him, behind the offensive line. And that was another big note is this offensive line mauled people. Like, this was a great offensive line. Betz, I'm really sorry, but I watched the Penn State game. Were you at that game?
Which one?
Penn State, Michigan.
Well, obviously. I meant what year?
This past year.
I was not at that game. Thankfully.
Usually you're at most Penn State games, but he went for 145 and 2, and my notes the entire time were just like, I feel like the lanes for him were just wide open, and that he more slips tackles than breaks them. Like, he's not just going to run over somebody the way that, you look like a Marshawn Lynch. He slips them. And then my last little note here is just, he just doesn't have an extra gear. And so he was caught from behind more, but with so many possessions inside the 5, like, yeah, he got a ton of those touchdowns. So is he a productive college back? Yes. I mean, he hits a lot of the thresholds we talked about, a 33% dominator rating. If he gets, day 2 draft capital, we still got to consider that. But in rookie drafts, I think he's trending more towards like a late second round pick that you are still just kind of guessing what is the usage and how much activity he's going to have his rookie year. So it's hard for me to get excited and say, I'm all in on this player.
Yeah, and I think in that, which you'll be able to see in the Dynasty Pass this Sunday, we just did a rookie mock that will be in there, and I think he was maybe the 3rd or 4th running back taken, which might surprise a lot of people, but I think that's kind of how we view him entering the combine cycle of the draft season and then the NFL draft.
Jason, any last thoughts on Corum?
I think we could do better. I think we will do better. This is not a class that I have loved going through. I've still got more running backs to go through. But usually when I get through the top 7, 8 running backs, I've seen the important ones. It's rare that I get to running back 12 in my scouting order because I'm trying to scout from perceived best, to worst. And it's rare that when I get to a late running back, I find a diamond in the rough that I really believe in. It happens sometimes. But so far, I mean, really, there's like 2 running backs I like in this class. And that's not great.
And just for each one of these running backs, I'll finish them off by giving a little draft capital size skill comparison. So Darrell Henderson, your boy Darnell Anderson, was taken in the 3rd round, very similar size, production. Zach Moss showed up as a comp, Jason, which makes me understand why he might be boring.
Yeah.
So anyway,
he's very Zach Moss.
Interesting names. All right, next name that I think the group is a little bit more excited about is Trey Benson from Florida State. He is a redshirt junior, and I need to make that clear because in 2020, Betz, you can tell me how bad this is, but in 2020, apparently he had a terrible knee injury that he tore his ACL, his MCL, his lateral meniscus, his medial meniscus, and a tendon in his hamstring all at once.
Yeah, not great.
Explain that to me.
I mean, just a pretty obviously complex ACL injury with other stuff. And we know
now that was in a horrific car accident, right? That's the only way you can get that level of an injury?
No, apparently you can do it on the football field.
Amazing.
But, when you consider that too, and then you understand, okay, yeah, the next season wasn't great, obviously, at Oregon, and then he transfers, and you see him, and this is what we talk about all the time, right, is like running backs in year 2 or year 3 off the ACL are actually back healthy, and you saw that when he got to Florida State. So that's why he was at Oregon and then transferred to Florida State.
And I need to give him a shout out. He's a birthday buddy of mine. We have the same birthday, July 23rd. I know.
I'm so
you automatically think he's already
happy for him. I'll hop in here with Trey Benson. He's my favorite running back by far in this class. I actually really liked his tape. While I don't think he is a super duper star, I don't think there is one of those in this draft class. I really liked it. He made extra yards on every play. He was very well rounded. I felt like he had good contact balance. He's got a nice. He's still only 21. He's 21.6 years old. He's 6 foot 220-ish. We'll see when he weighs in, but he's got the size, the speed, the weight, the age that I like. He has the film that I liked. I thought he had, just some really nice cuts, some nice vision. Everything that I watched, I was impressed with, not blown away by, but he looked to me like someone that will work in the NFL, that will make his own. That's something I guess we didn't really talk about that. I alluded to it when I talked about the one-on-ones, but in college, I'm looking at these backs that are making the yards for themselves, not just like, oh man, the lanes opened up and they were able to run through it fast. This is like, if you gave that same ball on that same play to a different human being, would he have gotten more yards or less yards? And I feel like Benson often impressed me where it was like he got yards someone else would not have got in that situation. So I was pretty impressed. And one of the things that really matters, and you find out several years into an NFL career, but I at least don't have the access and the knowledge and the insight into human beings' work ethics. I mean, they're all working hard in college football, but there are some people that have insane work ethics, and that's why they succeed. Christian McCaffrey has a legendary insane work ethic. I don't know any of these college guys' work ethic, but when I heard and found out about that LCL, MCL, all CLs injury, and then I watch him doing this, it's probably like that injury was thought at the time to be potentially career ending, and now he's gotten back to the point where he's looking awesome and amazing, and I don't think that can happen without a great work ethic. And so I love that he's come back from this. Obviously that might be a concern for longevity of a career, but running backs are so disposable. You're going to throw them away after the first contract probably anyways. So I really like that he had that injury, came back, was this strong. So I'm very pro Trey Benson. He's my running back 1 in this class.
You almost said Trey Boo Boo, didn't you?
I did not, but that's, I will now.
I'll give you a couple of notes real quick, because one of the things I just kept seeing is that it keeps his feet moving. Jason was talking about the extra yardage. Like, I just saw on certain runs, especially like outside zone, where it's just like, man, your feet keep moving in a direction where you should be hit or you should be taken down, so you're getting an extra 3 or 4 yards. That was good. I do think he rounds off, this is just my notes, he rounds off his cuts more than he should. Like, he's not like an electric cutter, like just, like LaShawn McCoy or something. Like, he kind of rounds it off. And his receiving, I wouldn't say it was like as fluid as I wanted. So I like Trey Benson. He has the NFL body that I'm looking for. The comps I got were on the high end, DeMarco Murray. So he has the body. He's able to like actually be an all-around back. Brian Robinson is a medium comp, and my low end one was TJ Yeldon, which he did have a brief moment for fantasy, but after 3 or 4 years, it was done. But Betz, any thoughts on Benson?
Yeah, I mean, I echo, I think, a decent amount of what you guys are saying. I don't know that I'm quite as high. To me, he's a guy who will fit in a one-cut system, where I saw him kind of when he had those like outside zones and he could cut upfield quickly and accelerate. He was great. And we talked about being able to create explosive plays. Almost 15% of his carries last year went for 10-plus yards. You like to see that. Of course, he has that ability to get up upfield. But for me, like when I saw him have to slow down at the line of scrimmage, he kind of struggled to me to actually like pick up his acceleration again. So I'm okay with him. Like, I don't necessarily love him. I don't think he's incredible, but I think there's a lot of good things on tape. And, you mentioned the receiving wasn't incredible. They didn't really ask him to run like complex routes or anything like that, obviously. But when he got the opportunity, he was reliable. Caught 32 of 39 targets over the last 2 years. So he at least can give you that out of the backfield on a check down or, something like that. So I'm okay with Trey Benson. It sounds like, though, I'm a little bit lower in general than you guys. But I will agree, the size profile, the breakout age is exactly what you look for from college running backs.
As of this recording, I think he's most likely to be taken as the first running back of the NFL draft. Now, I'm not like 75, 80% confidence, but I think I'm like at like 60, 65% that he's the top one for the NFL.
I think I do too. I think by the time the NFL draft comes, that will be the first name. I think it's personally between two guys for the number 1 pick, but we'll see.
This next prospect is my personal favorite in this class. It's Jonathan Brooks of Texas. He's a sophomore, and he redshirted in 2021. He was behind Bijan, behind Roschon Johnson, and then this year, he only had 11 games played. He tore his right ACL. So there is okay, what did you see on film, and then where is he at his recovering process? But he's super young, 20.6 years old. He's 6 foot, 207, so he's fine height-wise. He's not a bruiser, but I just like Jonathan Brooks' film a lot. He looks so smooth. And my note was he runs with effortless light feet, the exact opposite of Isaiah Pacheco. Where Pacheco's just like stomping the ground. I feel like Brooks is one of those players that was just like, wow, he just
gliding.
Looks like gliding, barely touching. So I liked his film, but Betz, do we know anything on his injury recovery?
So his injury occurred in November this past year. I was listening to actually an interview with him about 3 weeks ago, And you guys may be shocked to hear this, but it sounded like he was,
wait.
dare I say, ahead of schedule.
Oh, yes. Oh,
now he's
thank
not in
goodness.
the best shape of his life quite
That
yet.
confirms
but
everything I want.
It sounds like that's coming. So that obviously is kind of I would say yellow flag on his profile, because the shelf life is so short on these guys. And if you're like, okay, is Brooks playing in week 1 or week 5 or whatever, and he's also learning the NFL and that kind of thing, then you could see him get off to a slow start in his career. But I will say, I'm with Kyle. This is my favorite running back in the class. Just looking at his profile and how he moves, like, this is what I want from my fantasy running back, is a guy that, Aaron Jones-esque, can give you 16-ish carries, but also 4 or 5 targets in the receiving game on a consistent basis. That's what I saw with Jonathan Brooks. So smooth. I like the fact that he can, make guys miss in space. I like the fact that he is decisive. His vision to me was awesome. So I'm actually pretty excited about Jonathan Brooks. Usually when guys take 3 years to break out, I'm a little hesitant, but when you put context around it and say, oh, that guy played behind Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, it makes a little bit more sense. So young, he's only 20 years old right now. Breakout age of 19.1 is awesome. This is a running back that I'm pretty excited about, and we'll see where he goes in the NFL draft.
So this is the second one. I said there's really 2 running backs that I like in this class. This is the second one. He certainly would not be someone I would like more than Benson. And the reason, from a fantasy football perspective only, is the ACL. That's it. It sucks. Film-wise, just as good. I like everything. When I started watching him, I was like, he's good. He's not great, but he's good. He's above average in just about everything. My notes were kind of funny, where it was like, he's fast, but he's not super fast. He's not one of those guys that's going to go run 4.3. He's tough, but he's not super tough. He's not, moving a giant pile. He's above average across the board, but I don't think he was sensational anywhere. That's what I'm always so excited about every rookie running back draft class. And there wasn't anyone who I thought was just superstar sensational in almost any one facet anywhere. I did, though, the more I watched Jonathan Brooks, the more I was like, every play is a win. Every play. Every single play is a win for him. And so he kept moving up and up and up. I started kind of lukewarm on him. I was like, okay, he's okay. Okay, he's good. He might be really good. And the more I watched, the more I got excited. But the problem with the ACL is not it goes further than just, oh, darn, he's injured. This will affect his NFL draft capital. An NFL team might be a little bit more hesitant or wait a little longer or gamble a little bit more, and then the other teams try to gamble, and then he drops in the draft to a place where now you don't have the financial and draft capital investment into the player to make sure that as soon as he's back from the ACL, he's a big part of your plans. And so now if his career it's kind of, it's wacky to be like, oh, this November ACL could potentially, I'm not saying it will, I hope it won't. I think he's talented enough to overcome it, but it has the potential to start his draft capital and career in a slow place where the team who drafts him obviously has to have something else ready to go. They're not going to start the season with him more than likely as the primary running back. And so now he's starting as a backup with lower draft capital. And it's like, will that career trajectory get to where he is great for fantasy? So that's why he can't be my number one guy, because I think there's a lot of flags there due to the late ACL. But I really, really liked the tape, and I agree with you guys. The smoothness, the gliding, I thought he had good hands. He did everything that I look for. Didn't blow me away, but he checked every single box enough.
Betz, you've done research on ACL performance, for how it takes them a year or two, and I feel like it's just one of those picks that even if you, in year one, he's probably not a player you can count on in your rookie drafts that you're like, oh, he's going to be contributor right away. But I just like him we know that the running back position has such a short shelf life. But man, if you knew you had a player in year 2, or second half of year 1 that could make an impact, I think he's my favorite like impact player, but obviously landing spot matters a ton. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Now is the time to accelerate innovation. T-Mobile for Business is powering Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix operations and epic fan experiences with secure, reliable 5G connectivity. Because an event this big and this fast deserves a network that can set the pace. See what our 5G advanced network solutions can do for your business at T-Mobile.com/now. View 5G device coverage and access details at T-Mobile.com.
Whether you're cheering on your favorite team or hosting a movie night, DiGiorno knows planning a winning watch party on a budget isn't easy. You need the perfect setting, the perfect squad, the perfect eats, and the perfect plan to keep everyone pumped all night long. So why would you fumble the play by ordering delivery? The wait times, the fees, the cold food, it can't outdo the delicious fresh-baked taste of DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza, especially on game night. No, you need to draw up the perfect plan. Luckily, you're a game time mastermind, and you know that grabbing a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza is one call that brings home a W. With half a pound of cheese, sauce, and other toppings at an incredible price, it's your game day MVP, most valuable pizza. So are you ready for a big W at your next watch party? Don't take any chances. Make the right call and grab a DiGiorno Classic Crust Pizza from the grocery store today. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno.
All right, we're back with Notre Dame's Audric Estime. I took French for 8 years, people. And man, Estime is one of those guys that he runs angry on the field. He looks like he could beat me up. He probably could. And
absolutely could. There's no question about that.
He's young.
Everybody in this list could beat you up, Kyle. Like
Hold on.
everybody.
Let me confirm.
Well, who's the tiniest
Even
guy?
Bucky Irving can beat
Bucky
you up,
Irving's
Kyle.
gonna
Yep.
whoop you like crazy.
Oh man, I'm going to get dunked on for all this. 20.4 years old. He profiles like a really tough runner, but I will say I think he jukes more than he should for someone who's his size and his weight. He also shifts down a lot when he's running, where I'm like, I feel like you need to go to the next gear and you're shifting down. There's certain running backs when they cut, you're like, oh, you lost a ton of speed here. So a lot of production. 18 rushing touchdowns. That's the all-time Notre Dame rushing record for rushing touchdowns in a season. So like the production this final year, and he's still young. So what are your notes, Jason, on Estime?
I estimate that I don't like him.
Oh.
I mean, that's going too far to say I don't like him. He's got a role. He's got a place in the NFL. I think, being a bigger body back, there's always a need for them big, thick boys. And I do prefer, I want my running backs to be 210 pounds plus. Sometimes they can be a little bit 2+, and I think that's kind of how he came across to me, was like if he were to prepare for the combine for the NFL and lose some pounds, I would be a little bit happier. He looked too thick. And
Jason.
Yeah, sorry. I think he'll have a role, but he's not going to run away from NFL defenders, in my opinion. And so I'm not excited about him personally. I think he'll, maybe be a goal line back. I don't think he's going to come in and be a workhorse or be given the total utilization that's going to be really valuable for fantasy.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw this on tape. This man loves the high knees, like hurdle to try to break a tackle.
Yes, I saw some jumps.
He used it all the time. But my notes are, a power back. Obviously, he's got the size to do that. The lateral agility to me is not great. I could see that being an issue, obviously, at the next level. Didn't see him create a ton of yards on his own, personally, are my notes on him. And I don't know if it's the fact that he was wearing number 7 late in his career or what, but I kind of saw a Leonard Fournette type where, and I'm not talking about peak Lenny, later in his career Lenny, where it was okay, he's good. It's not great.
I actually think that's a decent comp. He can go out there, he can get you, a couple yards at a time and take a beating and keep on going, but inefficient. I think
Yes.
in the NFL he will be an inefficient runner.
I saw a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah, I mean, with draft capital, that matters a lot. But let's say he goes 3rd, 4th, 5th round, somewhere around there. It's like Jason said, like, is there a goal line role? Maybe. Could he be a solid backup and like get some short yardage stuff? Sure. But he doesn't have the pass catching profile. My comp was Niall Davis, who had a hot minute.
Yeah.
Oh, Niall.
That's
He was
actually
the back-
I like that comp. I don't know that he's got the speed that Niall Davis has. But that's interesting. Although I do take major issue with the way you just casually lumped 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds together. A 3rd round pick for a running back is phenomenal. That's what you want. That's a day 2 selection. A 4th round pick is garbage.
Is there a difference between the 96th pick and the 100th pick?
There's a
huge.
days.
It means everything, Kyle. It means everything.
So I will not stand for that. The way that the NFL teams value their top 3 picks versus the way that they devalue their 5th round and later picks, those change outcomes for fantasy running backs.
I was only using that because Niall Davis was taken 96 overall in the 3rd round. But let's move on to a big boy, and I'm talking the biggest of them. It's Braelon Allen of Wisconsin. He's super young, and I had to do some digging of like, why is this guy so young? Well, he reclassified. He graduated a year early from high school, so that's part of it. But he's only 20.1 years old, and yet 6'2", 245. This is a big boy with the youngest breakout age of this group. I mean, that is super young, 17.6 for his breakout age.
He couldn't buy a pack of smokes, and he's breaking out. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
And in a college that has produced running backs at the NFL level for years and years and years, it's always been kind of a running back factory there. Beyond just being a big boy, he does run upright, which you see with taller running backs, right? He's 6'2", so you don't love that. And so when you look at what he is good at and how that translates to fantasy, you're never going to see him, I think, be a every down back for this team. Like, you're going to see him be more in a role where he's a thumper in short yardage. He's Brandon Jacobs, who was a monster for a short while, had some huge touchdown seasons for the Giants. And I think the draft capital is going to end up being 4th round. But what is your all's thoughts on Braelon Allen?
I mean,
you go first, Betz. I want to hear your takes.
Well, I was just gonna say, this guy's a monster, man. Like, when you look at him, and what's funny is I had a video that was kind of like popped up as like the next to play in my list of things for Braelon Allen, and the suggestion was actually a high school highlight reel, which was hilarious because you look at him from when he was a high school kid to when he stepped on campus at Wisconsin. The dude like doubled in size, like clearly hit the weight room, put on a ton of muscle and mass. He is massive, and that worked in college. But he is your classic, to me, kind of like, you need the quarterback under center, you need a power running scheme to make it work. In his final season, they switched schemes and had him run out of shotgun a ton. I don't know if you guys saw that switch throughout the film in his career. And the efficiency declined a little bit. He didn't look as explosive to me, didn't look as natural. So typically not the profile of back that I love for fantasy, where, again, he can't catch the football, caught 49 of 60 targets, but it's all check down stuff. It's not real routes. It's not plays designed to go to him in the passing game, stuff like that. So to me, at the NFL level, profiles as kind of your classic early down bruiser who hopefully can get goal line work. And if you take him, you're hoping he gets, he has to kind of luck box his way into those touchdowns or that role, so to speak. So don't love betting on those guys, but historically, just if you bet on, if you just close your eyes and don't watch the tape and you just bet on young, early production, Power 5 school, that stuff generally works out. So we'll see. But like you said, I'm not sure that the draft capital will be there. So that's a big knock, obviously.
I think he will be drafted higher than you guys think. I think the draft capital will be there for Braelon Allen because NFL teams, a lot of times they're looking for something. And if they are looking for a goal line back, if they're looking for a big 240-pound back, This is the guy. I mean, he's a a big young athlete, and I think that he's just got a couple of those things where you're not going to find another one, so teams will be forced to take this one.
That's a good point.
When I watched him at first, he was actually the first running back I scouted. When I was looking at a lot of lists, he was some people's running back 1. And so I was pretty pessimistic watching. The Ohio State game, I think my final note was sucked all game. I mean, he fumbled twice, and
yeah, that was rough.
Obviously, a really good Ohio State front. So I think that kind of skewed my watching of Braelon Allen as I watched Buffalo and Illinois and Nebraska, and But I went back. I watched a little bit more since he was the first guy that I scouted and got off to a bad game when I first watched. And there are some things that at least make me go, I can see a path for fantasy football success. Like, I can see the path for him. When you are that big and that young, if he gets drafted well, he'll have touchdown opportunities. He can also catch the ball really well. He has really good hands. Now, ironically, I think I look for two different things with pass catching. The hands and the fluidity, like the transition. And I think he's really good. He's got really good hands and really bad transitions. I feel like every time he caught the ball, you throw it to him, he's going to catch it. But then it's like he needs to like regroup, turn his hips, stop, plant his foot, and then start running. It's like, oh no, you're tackled by then. That's what I kept seeing. So I will also say he has incredible top speed when he gets into the second level. Like, if he breaks through, he's a freight train. You see that with Derrick Henry and guys where it's like, when you're 240 plus pounds and you get moving, that's going to be a big play. And so my note on him, the biggest takeaway I have is, I've got my final kind of quick snippet was big, strong, tough, great in the second level. Don't think he gets there often in the NFL. I don't think he will break through to the second level in the NFL. I am overly a little bit pessimistic on his outlook, but yet if he's able to, he's got just so many really special attributes. His age, his weight, his top-end speed, and his hands. I mean, if you told me just those four things, I'd be like, I am so super in on that human being. If you've got good hands, good top speed, good weight, and good age, like, those things hit. They hit so often that I really want to be in on him. But when I watched the tape, I was just not sure that he was strong enough and in the short yardage stuff to break past to where the other stuff happens. But because he's still so young, I'm not going to close the book on Braelon Allen. Like, he could – his outcome at the highest level, if you're just rating, like, which one of these guys could be a fantasy, like, could have the path for a league-winning type of season, I could see Braelon Allen having that. I don't think he will, but most of these other guys, I just can't even see it. I can't write the narrative of how a true breakout happens for fantasy. I can easily write that narrative for Braelon Allen.
I think the point that you're making is you have to weigh 5 or 6 different things. Well, we don't know the draft capital, so we're going to have to weigh that. And the scheme fit, like you said, there could be a team that says, this is the only back in this class that is like this, that is this big, that we can use a certain way, and it could work. He also could go to a team and just sit behind somebody else because he's not a traditional back, and, they just move on. So, yes, you will find him. I've seen him, like Jason said, number 1 in some people's rankings, because if you look at the breakout age, his current age, you look at the production, you go, okay, well, that all makes sense. Why is this guy not number 1? And that's why we kind of take a holistic approach. We look at 3 or 4 different things and admit, I don't know this guy. He's just different.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably going to be one of the, sorry to cut you off, Kyle, I think one of the most landing spot dependent guys for me. and draft capital, obviously, but like if he goes to the scheme where you could see them using him as their power back, it makes sense. So I'm going to kind of leave that open-ended until we get to April.
All right, so let's talk. We got a couple more backs here. This is our first small back. Remember last year's class, we came on here, Jason called them itty bitty baby boys and like, oh, they're, sub 200 pounds. This is our first one we've talked about that's below the 200-pound level. It's Bucky Irving of Oregon. So he transferred from Minnesota to Oregon and was pretty productive for a team that was right there in the mix in college football. Solid breakout age, but 5'10", 195 makes him a little bit smaller. But what I saw on film is he hits the hole actually kind of hard for somebody who's smaller. His arms are somewhat frantic when he runs, like they're almost like cartoonish, like he waves them when he runs with his other hand. But he has the all-around skill set I look for. I mean, 56 receptions in this final year. I mean, that's incredible. And the comp I kept getting was James Cook-esque or Tajay Spears, two players that, recent comps, but when you combine all those things, you combine people that are explosive. And I think that he can be used in a way where he's not just a scat back. I liked Bucky Irving. I like what I saw on film. I also temper my expectations because Oregon players have always been my bugaboo because it's just such a different scheme and translating that to the NFL is just so different. So I'll say that I liked him, but I want to hear y'all's thoughts. So Betz, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest strength to me is the pass catching ability. Led all running backs this past year at the FBS level in both targets and catches. So to me, if he is going to carve out a role for fantasy, that's probably where it's going to have to come from, especially when you consider the size, 5'10", 195, and we'll see what that actually is at the combine when they weigh in. But we know size correlates well to fantasy production because of opportunity. So this is a guy that you can take a shot on, I think, somewhere probably in the second to early third, depending on draft capital of your rookie draft, where you kind of hope he gets that, 8 to 10 carries plus 3 to 4 targets a game role and hope he's explosive with them. To me, that's really the only path. So I wasn't incredibly impressed with the tape as a runner personally, but anytime a running back can catch the football 50 plus times, especially in college, it is very eye-opening. So that's encouraging at least, but overall, I'm not a huge fan of him as a runner.
Yeah, I'm pretty much out.
What?
Yeah, sorry. There's a path for him to be fantasy relevant, just like Betz said, as a pass catcher. He's very, very James White to me. James White was the running back 8 in 2018. He's very same height, weight type of player, a great pass catcher. And James White was super relevant, but that was his 5th year in the NFL, and it took 123 targets and 87 receptions that year. So something like that could happen where he's just put into a place where he's used as a pass catcher. Last year, I really liked Devon Achane, but I was pretty much out because I just thought it's not going to be able to translate until the NFL draft came. And the Miami Dolphins, the perfect match for him, drafted him with draft capital. I'm like, I am super in because I saw the path for what his skill set does to match. I don't know that there is a spot where immediately the day of the NFL draft or the day after the NFL draft I can go, I know they're going to use him in the right way. I know they're going to give him enough volume. My notes on him, I mean, they're like right off the my notes say looks tiny right off the bat. Speedy, looks itsy bitsy, has some good moves and cuts, but won't get volume in the NFL. Says he's 195 pounds. Yeah, in your bra. Those are the type of notes that I've got. When I watched,
poor Bucky. Sorry,
Bucky. When I watched, he can hit the hole hard, but he doesn't hit it with the mass and acceleration you need to do something with it. He didn't break arm tackles. Like Devon Achane, he was small, but like he broke tackles. He didn't just avoid tackles. Bucky Irving, this guy can run away from guys. He can make guys miss. He can get, have those type of broken tackles, but he didn't run through tackles. I saw a guy push him down once. Like, not a joke. So it's like, I don't think the volume will translate in the NFL for enough fantasy success. I want them points. I want them opportunities. I don't think he gets enough opportunities. Now, the pass catching is totally legit, and that is a path. So he has a path to fantasy relevance. I'm just going to probably bet against it based on my perceived future opportunities given.
Yes. And with players, that's what we talked about. You give a high-end comp of, I see this in this player. So I mentioned James Cook. But the low end is names like Justice Hill or Mark Walton. Who could forget the great Mark Walton? So,
oh my gosh. That's me. That's a name I was not expecting to hear today.
Say hi to your mother for me.
Hey, footy for the year. By the way, Devon Achane, you were talking about him. I was watching Jaden Daniels' film when Devon Achane was there. He was the best player on the field. Like, Achane killed it in that game that I was watching. So Bucky Irving's interesting. I have a couple more names here. Will Shipley from Clemson. His production is difficult to kind of understand because in 2022, it was great all-around game. He was actually an All-American if you look at all-purpose and return specialist, so he has that in his game. And then this past year, he was kind of leapt on the depth chart, and then he had a concussion and a knee injury, which held him out of the bowl game. So it was like, you have to kind of factor all that stuff in. This is what I said about Will Shipley, is that he can make things work in the swing game as a pass catcher. He's kind of like a jack of all trades, but master of none. And I think he sets up his blockers well. I liked his film against Duke where they were getting destroyed. He could still run on the ground. He still catches passes. All of that to say, this is probably someone who's going to end up as he was a good college player at a good program in Clemson and maybe be a dependable special teams, kind of like depth back. But it's hard for me to see his fantasy future apart from injuries on a depth chart. So, Betz, what do you think about Shipley?
Yeah, I wish I could be the guy that's like super excited about it and just be different than you, Kyle, but I'm with you. It took 6 or 7 games before like I finally saw a play where I was like, oh, like that was pretty nice. It's a lot of compiling, not a lot of explosiveness, I think just an average NFL, like you said, potential backup, maybe change of pace type guy. I just don't see it. And again, I think he is kind of one of those guys, like you said, that probably will be like, oh yeah, I remember him from Clemson. He was pretty good. Yeah, sure, I'll take him in the 3rd round of my rookie draft and hope something happens. I just don't see it personally in the NFL.
Are you saying that he's going to sell insurance in about 4 years?
I mean, he could be doing something else.
No, he'll be playing special teams.
There you go.
I think he'll be
and that's fine.
I think he'll be a valuable NFL teammate. It's funny when I was researching him, depending on which scouting service you were paying attention to, he was in some the number 1 running back recruit in that class going to Clemson. So this isn't this is a guy who was productive, came in as as one of, if not the best running back prospect from high school. I went and watched his high school film. I just like when you've got, the number 1 prospect, you want to go see, guys dominate. And I don't think he was ever touched. He looked much faster in high school. I didn't think he was very fast, not that he was like lumbering, but I was really hoping he had more speed than he did. And he's well-rounded. I do love his hands. I mean, he can catch the ball phenomenally. So, I'll be really, really interested where he goes in the NFL draft, like all these guys, but I don't think he will go very high. And I'm also very interested to see what he weighs. Right now, I've seen a range online between 200 and 210 pounds, and I think that is, while that sounds so petty and simple, it's a huge difference. If you're a 210-pound back that can go out there and catch the ball, you're big enough to move guys. You could be used, in goal line packages. When you're 200 pounds, you're not used in that way on the NFL field. I mean, look at James Cook. He's the 200-pound type, and they get down around the goal line, they pull him out. I was pretty uninspired by Will Shipley. I know that Mike, I think, liked him a little bit more than I did, or at least we saw things kind of differently. Like he thought he was really fast. I thought he was too slow. So that's one of those things where you watch the film and you could see the same player in the same game 2 different ways from 2 different sets of eyes. These are where combine metrics are going to be very valuable. I really wish we had access to the miles per hour data that is tracked now in college game performance, because that is so much more valuable than running a 40 in your underwear. But I didn't think he was anything special. I don't think he'll get the draft capital to be great, but he was a great pass catcher.
Yeah, right now I think 4th, 5th round, but, capable, change of pace backup, which in a dynasty roster, you want to roster those people, but you're also not counting on them. Let's close up here. We have some more running backs that we'll have and we'll talk about in the dynasty pass, but Ray Davis, 24 years old, super old man Davis, geriatric Davis, he's old. Marshawn Lloyd of USC is going to be another name that I think people are like, why didn't you talk about him? We will have rookie profile articles out on him. He was in the Senior Bowl. And then Dylan Johnson of Washington is another older player who happened to get on a run with Washington team that made it all the way to the college football finals. So these are just players that I think are fine, but I think will lack the draft capital. Any last notes you want to give on those players, guys, or you good?
I mean, I'll just jump in real quick on Marshawn Lloyd. I did kind of like him, actually, like watching him play. To me, he just has, I think, some good juice and burst, and was able to create yards and looked the part to me. So he's an interesting player. A lot of fumbling issues, big time concern. He needs to clean that up, obviously. And as you mentioned, draft capital is a concern on top of that. So of the guys that you mentioned, he's the one that I'd be, and I'm going to use this term loosely, most quote unquote excited about, but not that excited about it, if that makes sense. But I did like some of his tape.
For me, it would be Ray Smith, or I'm sorry, Ray Davis. Ray Davis, he's sold. He's just sold, and that's really hard to get behind. I mean, obviously, we're talking about this guy after a lot of other running backs. So a lot of other running backs we didn't even like. So this isn't full endorsement, but he's got a well-rounded profile. He showed enough speed. He's got the size I look for, the production, the conference. I mean, he checks a lot of boxes. And when I watched him, I don't know, I thought he was pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. And he's 24 years old, man. So there was a research article many years ago. I don't know if the age has changed. But we were looking at like the age cliff and peak values and like what's the life cycle of each position. And basically running backs peak their best season of their career is usually age 24. And I was like, wait, he lost it. He doesn't even get that year in the NFL. So it's like, he's going to turn 25 on the NFL field as a rookie. Yeah, so it is hard. Obviously, a bunch of different colleges. Maybe there are reasons and excuses for that, but I think Grandpa Davis is okay. I think he could be a decent all-purpose back in the NFL.
Something to keep in mind, we talked about this with Mike, is that if you want to look at this year's class and think of guys that maybe just didn't knock it out of the park this past year and insert them in this class. So like Kendry Miller is 3 years younger than Ray Davis. And we would say Kendry Miller is a player that you could probably try to acquire with a draft pick and say, hey, if I put Kendry Miller in this year's draft class, I might put him as, RB2, RB3, however you feel about him. And I think we were all kind of excited. And so therefore you could use that draft pick that you have in your rookie draft and say, you know what, the 208, the 205, whatever you have, like I'll go for Kendry Miller over, a running back that I'm not that excited about. So think about that with these guys, their age, their production, combine them together. And this isn't the only group that's young. I mean, there's young running backs in the NFL. So next week, we will be talking about quarterbacks, which is my personal favorite position to scout. And we'll go through all of the positions over the next month. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.
Introducing the first ever Grand Highlander, a mid-sized SUV with the ideal combination of space, performance, style, and advanced tech. The roomy Grand Highlander boasts 3 spacious rows with available seating for up to 8. Its available 362 horsepower hybrid max powertrain, unlimited and platinum trims, delivers the power, acceleration, and efficiency so your family can take on any adventure. There's even a standard digital key, a panoramic view mirror, and a 12.3-inch multimedia touchscreen, so you always arrive on time. Live life grander in the first ever Toyota Grand Highlander. Learn more at toyota.com/Grand Highlander.